Okay. Oh, just before I start, I've got two more people coming in. Okay, well, as I said, I would first of all like to really thank everybody for joining in this evening. Um, if you were at the AGM earlier in the year, you'll know that what we've tried to do with the Zoom meetings is try and respond to what is most helpful for people. And to inform that process, what we had done was put out a survey which told us that lots of people are terribly busy. So if we're going to invite people along to things, it has to be really useful for people, and also not too often because people are busy. So we from now have gone over to 4 Zoom meetings a year, and what we're hoping to do is make a couple of them, so 2 per year, very Shiatsu based, and hopefully to invite some very wise, experienced Shiatsu practitioners to come and share their knowledge and experience, to make one of them quite useful in terms of us as the board being able to communicate news and things to you, but also to help prepare for Shiatsu Awareness Month. And then we felt that this is the time of year when people are beginning to graduate and come into their Shiatsu practice, and that given what's going on in the big world outside with the cost of living crisis and everything else that's going on, that actually, whether you're new or not, it's quite a good time for everybody to come together and share tips and ideas of how to move on with your Shiatsu, how to sustain your Shiatsu, how to build your practice. So that's the purpose of what we're doing today. And one thing which, again, I mean, I don't think I've ever had a support Zoom meeting that's had so many participants, so thank you very much. But also we put out in our email, we asked for some feedback from everybody, of 2 things really. One was, what piece of advice have you been given that you really valued? And the second question was, what would you pass on to other people? So it's a little bit like the inheritance tracks that they do on Radio 4, but this is our own special version. And I had so many pieces of feedback. I've got 3,000 words worth to work through, which is absolutely brilliant. What was slightly more challenging was a lot of that came in over the weekend. So I had the outline of a presentation ready for Friday, and I had to completely rewrite it this morning. So what I'm going to give you is very much a flavour of what came in, and then we are going to use those 3,000 words of wisdom and put them together and make a resource and put it onto the website for everybody to share. And I must say that as the person who was receiving all this and sifting it through, it was a very humbling experience, and also quite uplifting, because well, from my own experience, sometimes it can be a bit of a lonely place being a Shiatsu practitioner and trying to put things together and plow your furrow through difficult times. And it was just, as I say, well, hopefully as I share it with you, you'll see that there's actually so much support and positivity out there. So that's what we're going to do. So I am now going to attempt to share my screen with you. Hopefully that will work if I can find my share screen magic. Okay. So this is entitled Growing Your Practice. And what I intend to do as we go through is to, first of all, just explain to you what we were doing, and then a bit of non-Shiatsu stuff. There's a model in coaching practice called the Grow model, and it is possible for us to apply that in a keyful way to Shiatsu. So I will just go through that, and then I'll give you some themes from the feedback, and then hopefully we will have the opportunity to have some questions. Okay. So before I talk at you for a bit, I think that it would be a lovely idea just to begin with 5 minutes of quiet. But as I was putting this together and thinking about how to find our way into the whole key of the situation, I've got a little quote from the Tao, and I also had a couple of the quotes that were sent in to me that really jumped out to me and I thought would be worth sharing with you. So I'm going to read those and then we'll have just 5 minutes just to let that. First of all, I'm sure that everybody's rushed here in the midst of a busy evening. And secondly, just to really just let those things permeate in. So I'll read them out and then our 5 minutes will be boundaried at either end with a bell. So the quote from the Tao: the most difficult things in the world must be accomplished through the easiest. The greatest things in the world must be accomplished through the smallest. Trust in your gift of healing. Trust in the passion you have for Shiatsu. Okay, thank you, everyone. So if we go on to have a look at this grow model of coaching. So it actually comes from business. It was invented by somebody who works in motorsport, in fact. But it's been extensively used in lots of different arenas. So I was trained to use it coaching teachers. Just it was put in place to address poor performance in specific subjects in schools. But it's something that I think actually if we use it in the correct way, that definitely lends itself to what we might be doing with our own Shiatsu practice. So the acronym for it is GROW. And the starting point is just thinking about what your goal is. So when we go on in a minute and have a look at some of the responses that I've got, a lot of people were very, very clear in the advice that they were giving about people thinking very carefully about what it was they were trying to achieve, and that if you've got that vision and you know what your goal is, then it's much easier to work towards that, and actually having that very clear path to follow is often very helpful. So I think the way that I use this model, the way that I was trained to use it, is to ask lots of critical questions in each point as we go along the way, to actually get the person that you're working with to think clearly about where they're going. I think for us as Shiatsu practitioners, maybe the thing to do is kind of do the exact opposite, which is get yourself into a place where you've got the spaciousness for those things to actually work themselves out. So do it in a very much more reflective way. But the first step in the process is, what is your goal? And then the next step in the process is thinking about the reality or the nuts and bolts of your situation. And again, if we were doing this in a business context, then there would be lots more critical questions about what, for example, what your barriers might be, the things that are going to hold you back. So, and again, we can approach that in a keyful way. And then moving on, it's thinking about the options. So what can you actually do to achieve your plan? And I think that I would have to say, for example, just thinking about this presentation on Friday, I had about half the number of contributions that I ended up with, and I had started to put together a plan, but allowing some spaciousness for a bit of blue sky thinking by this morning, that had completely changed, and somehow or the other I managed to be able to form that into what I'm talking to you about today. So it is actually the beauty of having the spaciousness to respond to what comes along. And then the final part of the model is quite a dynamic idea about really thinking about what you're going to be doing. So it's something that has a certain amount of, if you like, a certain amount of movement to it. So it's a little bit different from target setting. And again, just thinking about the key of the situation, it's allowing that flow and that movement in the process. So that is the grow model, and that's the kind of, I don't know, that's the non-Shiatsu bit of it. So if we move on, I'm just going to share with you the general themes and what came out in the responses to the questions. So what quite surprised me was that there were very clearly two different ways that people had responded to what we were asking them. So there were a lot of very well I've tagged them as personal, but it's more about the individual as a Shiatsu practitioner. So there were so many comments about the importance of who you are and what your Shiatsu is like and how you relate to people. And I picked out, so the ones that I've put on the slides don't carry any more merit than any of the others. It was just that they were the ones that jumped out to me at the time. When we put the resource together, everybody's responses will be in there. But people responded with things like, Shiatsu is a lifelong journey of discovery and learning. People come to us for our vitality. Learning Shiatsu will likely change your world paradigm. So very powerful stuff going on there. It's very interesting. And then there were also a lot of responses about the actual process of how you do your Shiatsu and how you build your practice. And again, there were lots of other ones. These were just the ones that jumped out to me as I was putting this together this morning. So to build your practice, start with the client in front of you. How's that for a great piece of advice? Have a clear vision and put effort into establishing your practice. And then that idea about word of mouth will always draw your clients in. So they're, as I say, two quite different perspectives are equally important, and they sort of marry together. So what I've done with those is to actually just think about 5-element theory, really. So if I go on to the next slide. So as I was reading through, there was a theme coming through, and just thinking about actually this, it is kind of cyclical, and there are ways that we can look at things. So before I'd had everybody's responses, I thought that I was going to be doing quite a sort of dry session about all the things that you can do that are going to make you successful. And by the end of it, what I had got was a very multi-dimensional kind of thing, and something that very much is holistic in the sense of everything that you do, and also in the sense of the 5 elements. So the most obvious one is metal, because we're thinking about our practice and organization and everything else, but actually we will end up coming full circle. So just thinking about metal aspects of what we do, lots and lots of people were saying value in different ways. They were saying it, but what they were essentially saying is value your work, and that came through in lots of ways. So financially value your work, but also just, you know, you've got all these wonderful skills and knowledge that you're going to take out into the world. Value it, it's important, the world needs it. It's the sort of thing that people were saying. There was the next big theme that came through was thinking about creating your space. So lots of people were giving advice about the physical space, and about creating your space, making that healing space, making it safe for people to come into, somewhere where people know, you know, that they associate that with feeling better when they go out, having a lovely experience, all of that kind of thing. People were also talking about creating your space energetically, and that's both within yourself and within your treatment space as well. So very important. Having the headspace to do your shiatsu. And for a lot of people, and particularly I think in the current climate with the cost of living squeeze and everything that's going on, you can actually end up with a lot of quite serious preoccupations apart from your shiatsu. So that idea about being able to put that to one side when you go into your created shiatsu space. And then people were also had quite a lot of very sensible advice about how you can create your space financially. So things like being very clear about what your charging policy is, and how you deal with cancellations, and how you might possibly set that aside from other things that you do, so that it's very clear that that's your shiatsu bit, for example. And then people were talking about the importance of keep building and keep developing, so that everything's got a freshness and you're learning. And as one of the quotes from the previous slide, it's a lifelong journey that we're on. And then The other big piece of advice was about having a structure. And again, advice was coming in from lots of different angles of creating a structure. So a structure to your treatment, a structure to how you fit Shiatsu into the rest of your life as well. So those are metal aspects. So if we move on and think about water aspects, another huge thing that kept coming up and was jumping off the page at me was people were talking about trusting in your practice. So trust your key, trust what's happening, be brave about what you're doing. And it was almost having that faith that the key will actually lead you to where you need to be. So I remember when I was a very baby Shiatsu practitioner, I was always being reminded, be in hara, it'll be okay. And to an extent, when I was working as a hospice nurse, I think every single time before I went into somebody's house, it was like, right, am I in my hara? Am I grounded? And then I could pretty much cope with whatever was thrown at me, even though it was, in a sense, nothing to do with Shiatsu. So that idea about being brave. And then another very, very important thing, and lots of the advice that was coming in was very much to do with this, about make sure that you're looking after yourself. Don't underestimate the importance of rest. And I think at the moment when lots of people have many demands being made on them, it's even more important just to remember that idea about rest. And another thing which was brought up, and I think that you can't underestimate this either, is just reframing. If you're having a quiet time, or even somebody sent him some comments about the fact that you might even need to step away from your Shiatsu for a while, but that isn't necessarily a sense of failure. That's stepping away, and it will always be there when the time is right for you to pick it up again. And I think that that's really important as well. So if there's a time when you're not actually actively doing things, that's a space for reflection and recreation. It's not a bad thing. Sometime all of us probably needs that. So I thought I found that quite a useful piece of advice there. So then if we go on and think about the wood aspects, I think that there were a whole number of comments really about having a clear vision for your work. And again, when people were giving advice, it was both thinking about what you actually do in your session with a client, and also in a much broader sense about your practice and your direction and where you're going with things. The next point was all about how you reach out to people. And I think what was very interesting about that was that, you know, when I said at the beginning that there were lots of comments that were about the practitioner as a person, and also lots and lots of comments about how you do things. And in terms of how you reach out, that again was very individual, and I quite a big illustration really of how you can play to your strengths. So lots of people were talking about, you know, engaging with your clients through IT and things like that. Other people were very much talking about how you do that in a very personal way. So there was even some advice from somebody who goes down to the farmers market every week and doesn't use IT at all, talks to people, and that for her that was very successful. So it's that idea of being very creative and doing what is a good fit for you, but where the key leads you, I guess. Also thinking about the wood element, it's quite important to remember that if you're doing your practices to nurture yourself and you're very grounded and very rooted in what you do, your Shiatsu will enable you to be resilient in life's challenges. So that idea of trusting in the process is quite important, because you will be putting in the work, you'll get through it, it'll be fine. And then I had a lot of comments about just go slowly, just go at your own pace. It's not a race. And so, given that we're talking about the wood element, that I very much thought about, yeah, beautiful trees grow very slowly. So just allow time for things to develop and let them go at their own speed, but just trust that they are moving forward. So then if we think about the fire element, again, another thing that came through very strongly was people's passion for shiatsu and how they communicate that, and that very much tying into who we are as shiatsu practitioners, that some that passion that motivates us and makes us do our shiatsu and work with people. It's something that's very alive and people can see. And I think there was just like the comment about, you know, people come to us because of our vitality, so we just need to nurture that and keep that going. Network and share your shiatsu, so that's very important as well. And lots of the practitioners who sent in comments to me were talking about who you share your shiatsu with. So if you are somewhere where there aren't very many other shiatsu practitioners, there's nothing to stop you linking up with practitioners of other modalities and sharing that way. And that's actually a very good way of developing understanding of each other's practices as well. So that's been very successful, and I know that all around the place there are partnerships of different types of practice working together and enhancing each other's practice in terms of reaching out into the community. So that's all very positive. And somebody spoke about that circle of positive key. So the work that you've done with your client, they will tell their family and their friends, and it's like a ripple, so that the enjoyment and the benefit that they get then ripples out to all the people that they know, and it kind of works its way out that way from the center, from the center being the shiatsu treatment that you've been doing. And then this last point is actually a quote from somebody who says, when we see our clients with kindness and compassion from our hearts, the healing has already begun. There's that idea as well about what comes out from our heart space that ripples out into the community and into the wider world. And then just thinking about the earth aspects of developing our practice, what came through very strongly was the importance of building a network of support. That's something that since I've been working with the Shiatsu Society, I've found it a little bit challenging to work out exactly how to do that, because it's lovely to have a great Zoom meeting and lots of us meeting together, but it is Zoom. And really what is lovely is when people can actually physically get together and be in the same room and actually be properly physically sharing shiatsu. So I'm still working on that one, but locally networks of support are very important, so that we can support one another in that way. The next point is actually a quote from somebody who sent information into me about be kind to yourself. I think we can never remind ourselves too often to do that. So be aware of your own needs and receive treatments as well as giving them. And, you know, if you're a shiatsu practitioner, you're likely to be quite an warm, empathetic person. If you're not careful, you'll be giving out much more than you receive. So it's that idea of not being able to pour from an empty cup. Really, it's important to remember that. Okay, so that's a flavor of those 3,000 words worth of comments that I've got sent in. So rather than listening to me now, what I would like is some comments, other things that people would like to share, and any questions which I'm sure Elaine as well will attempt to answer as we go along. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you can see me again. Okay, so first of all, the first thing is any comments, first of all. So if you put your hand up, if you want to give me a comment. Anyone? Okay, any questions? I stunned everyone into silence. Alec, you've got your hand up. Let me unmute you if I can. Are you unmuted?
There we go. Hello.
Yep, you should be unmuted. Yep, lovely.
Yeah, I was pleased to see that your first slide included a quote from the Tao. And that is all about, the quote is about letting things happen naturally and not forcing them. And I think that is the only way that works, really, when you're trying to build a practice like Shiatsu. You can't force it to happen. You just have to be patient and let it happen naturally. And I did think it was the focus on yourself and the client that is in front of you, and that treatment that you're doing in that moment is what then the energy you give out then is what ripples out and ends up building your practice. So yeah, I thought that was very good. I can agree with all of that. That's what I found personally.
Thank you. I think that I see myself as having curated all the wisdom that everybody has sent in to me. So I've pulled it all together, but a lot of those, the quote from the Tao was my quote, but a lot of the other things, because yes, the Tao is very rich in wisdom, isn't it?
Mm.
But yes, I mean, as I say, what I have done is brought together all the things that people have said, and I'm sort of trying to coordinate this, but it is just wonderful what has come from what I put out, because when I've put together the resource, it's just going to be just a wonderful reflection of what a bunch of practitioners can do when they get together to support each other.
Mm. So I suppose my question would be, what have individual practitioners found works for them in a practical and more detailed sense than just generally?
In a more detailed sense, so obviously I had a lot to read through from the responses that came in over the weekend. A lot of it is very much about being able to personally get people to experience Shiatsu, so finding lots of opportunities to be able to do that. With some people suggesting don't do too much of it because you risk depleting yourself. But if you can get the opportunities to let people experience what shiatsu is about, that actually in inverted commas speaks volumes, and is actually much more effective than lots of the other things that people have tried to do with, you know, marketing and social media and all of that kind of thing. That in a sense, there is still no substitute for putting your hands on somebody.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I found, that a lot of people don't know what shiatsu is, and they've never experienced it. So I give out free shiatsu mini treatments, because I find if you're offering it for free, people will have it.
Yeah.
And I find people queuing up to have the mini treatments, but then once they've had it, it's like you were saying in your slides, that then if they don't then book a treatment and want to pay for a treatment, they mention it to somebody else. Somebody will say, oh, I've got a bad back, or I've got migraines, and they'll say, oh, I know what would be good for that. So and then they give them my leaflet. So it's all about, people will listen to people that have actually had shiatsu themselves and found it worked, but they won't try it just because they read about it on a leaflet. So yeah, so that's what
Yeah.
works for me.
Yeah, I think also that at the moment when people are really feeling the pinch, it's hard to expect them to take a punt on something that they don't really know about.
Mm.
So, but as I say, that lots of people were saying, you know, yes, do it, but be very focused. I guess it's that thing about thinking about what your goal is and being very focused about it. And I had lots and lots of suggestions of different places that you might actually do your tasters and what have you. So, you know, linking up with local services and linking in when there are particular high profile events going on, like, you know, when we just had Mental Health Awareness Day and that kind of thing.
Mm.
That then you can piggyback onto those, but people are likely to be turning up at places for things that other people have organized, that you can then piggyback onto, that type of thing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Barbara, could I make a
Oh,
comment?
Elaine, there you are. Of course you can. I'm glad you put your hand up because I was struggling looking at the list.
So it was really to say, well, yeah, thank you for a lovely presentation. But also, what struck me particularly about it was what I call the balance, and maintaining the balance between inner and outer tools. So working with yourself, and that quote from the Tao and kind of yin and yang of things, the inner work, but also the outer work, the process. And I think as practitioners, whether we're starting out or not, it is so really important to maintain that balance between the inner work and the outer work. And I know for myself over the years that always I have noticed that I attract more clients, and things roll better when my energy is in a particular way. And you know, that depends upon everybody being different. I know that because I'm quite a sort of a yangy sort of person. So when I get more yang, then that's when things kind of come in. And when and then when it doesn't happen, it's just like, oh, okay, maybe I need to be a little bit more resting in yin just now. But yeah, so that would be my kind of comment about how to go forwards, but also as a comment upon what you've presented in this wonderful 5-element PowerPoint, which is great. Thank you.
Thank you. I wonder if anybody has any little case study of their own experience that they would be happy to share with us. Anything that they feel has been particularly successful.
Hello?
Are you unmuted, Greg?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Lovely.
Yeah, I think it's not so much a case study, it's just something that's cropped up for me. Is a really important thing has been finding a mentor. The last kind of 3 years, I've found someone locally. I was really lucky to find someone who lives just up the road from me, who is a Shiatsu practitioner and mentor. And that has really helped me to connect and to, sometimes you can't see the wood from the trees. You might have a block, something's not quite working, it's not going in the right direction, or things have just halted, come to a stop. It's good to talk stuff like that through with someone who gets it, who knows it, and also to have body work with someone, from someone, and getting to someone who's of that mindset and heart set, for me, has been really, really important. And I know it's an extra expense, but I would say it was worth every penny if you find someone that you resonate with. So I just wanted to mention that, something that's been really, really helpful for me.
Thank you. I think you're right. I think it's really important, and I think certainly COVID didn't help. But if our clients are missing touch a lot, and I've noticed in other spheres, I mean, I go into care homes quite a lot, and I think that even in there, the level of touch that everybody experiences has gone down enormously, and people are still feeling very isolated. So if we understand the importance of touch and we're still finding it hard to make those connections, it must be much harder for everybody else. So I think, yeah, it's very important to remember that. And if you're busy, sometimes you put yourself at the bottom of the stack, don't you, really? And actually sharing shiatsu, having shiatsu yourself, is fundamental to finding that balance that Elaine was just mentioning. It's really important.
Yeah, it's kind of being the calm in the storm. I sometimes think it's quite nice to offer that to our clients if we can. And the only way we can really do that is to do, well, what works for me is qigong, being in nature, bit of ecstatic dancing here and there, quiet time, bit of meditation, finding time for those things so we can be the calm in the storm. Because I don't know about you guys, but so many of my clients, their lives, they're in a big storm. The world is in a storm. It's all happening out there. So if we can be that kind of, that pinpoint of calm, I think people gravitate towards that. And it's a great thing within Shiatsu to be able to do that. It's not always easy, but it's a great thing to work towards.
Definitely. Can you unmute yourself, Dawn? Let me see if I can find you on my list.
So I've unmuted.
Oh, you are good.
So I'd just like to add something in relation to what Greg has said. And mentor is very important. I've had a mentor for a very long time. But when I first came out of my Shiatsu training, which was probably about 32 years ago, I feel that I would have valued having supervision. And it wasn't kind of talked about a lot in those days. And I also have a dance background. I know as a dance therapist, you can't even practice unless you actually do have regular supervision. And quite early on, I was faced with some very complex shiatsu situations like rape and suicide. And at that point, I wouldn't work with the people unless they were also working with a therapist too. And so that's where I found my support. And I was also able to work with the, you know, they weren't movement therapists, but they were therapists. But I do, you know, I'm not so aware how people come out of training today, but having regular supervision so you can talk about the practice, not just the practical ones, but perhaps the counter transference that might be happening within sessions, I feel is of value. And I just offering that. And I'm not sure how other people that have just qualified or are in the later stages of training perhaps might feel about that.
I think that's a very important point. I mean, I don't know if anybody else has got anything they want to add to that, because I think you're right. You don't know what your clients are going to bring to you, and sometimes they are things that actually you need to share with somebody else. Not in any safeguarding sense, but in that sense of that's been very difficult, and it's too much for you to hold without actually being able to assimilate it, I suppose. Yeah. So I don't know if anybody's got anything else to add to that.
Dawn, we can't.
Dawn, I can't hear you, but I think you're unmuted. Oh, where have you gone? Can we hear you now? Can you have another go? Oh.
Barbara?
Yes.
Well,
I am trying to, I've got her unmuted on my list. So I'm very puzzled.
I was just, while Dawn's getting organised, I was just going to say that the Shiatsu Society used to have a mentoring scheme, which was kind of like supervision for anyone who wanted, really. And over the last few years, we just haven't had the space and capacity to be able to offer that. But maybe if some senior practitioners, teachers were willing to have a look at providing that, then that's something that possibly in the future the board might be able to look at again.
Mm. Can we hear you now?
Elaine, sorry, was that group supervision or one-to-one?
That was one-to-one mentoring,
Right.
if I'm aware.
Right. Because sometimes peer group supervision can be quite useful as well.
We're still working on getting the support groups that had been running before COVID back up and running, but that might be a forum just for some informal supervision, especially if we then had the opportunity, if people needed it, to signpost people for it and some individual support. Mm. Dawn, on my list, you're unmuted. So I'm very puzzled. Elaine, have you got access to our controls?
No, because I didn't make myself a host today, but can Could you have a look in your waiting room, Barbara, and see if Dawn is there with her phone, and then you can let her in?
Aha. She's in. She's in.
Hi,
Unmute.
Barbara. Hi, everyone. sorry, I'm just sorry to disrupt everything. But linking up to what Greg and Michelle said earlier on about oh, I'm gonna. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna leave this one. Okay. So linking up with what Greg and yeah, yes, Michelle said. It's so important to have a support network because yes, we need to share our experiences. And I have a group here in Edinburgh with 2 colleagues, and we meet up for swaps and we get treatments because sometimes we need, our bodies too need processing. And occasionally, every 7 years, we get, we will get a very difficult client, who really brings the most ridiculous expectations or decides to pick on you when it's not even your thing. But that's why it's so important to be able to share that experience, and also to be in your keep up the inner work and be in your body and present so that you can even hold the space even when the client is very difficult, and then they start to respect your boundaries and they respect where you're coming from. These are just real experiences we've shared, and yeah, and you start to blame yourself. You think what's going on. So it is really vital to have that support, and humility in practice as well. I was going to add something about that. Just keep being humble in your practice and be real in it, and then people will really see that you can't lie really about where you're coming from. This is what I've learned, and sometimes things hit me after a very long time, and keep practicing. Keep practice. This is the main things we learned on day 1. Keep doing it. Sometimes I go back to notes that I learned 12 years ago, and then I go, oh gosh, I could see that in a new way again, or even the quality of touch and can change. Pausing when you practice as well. What are you working on, or what is this? So this is just, yeah, sorry, I wrote something down. And then the boundaries, of course, that whole thing about boundaries, and people will respect it. And that even includes setting a price and being clear about what you expect. Then people really don't take it for granted. Because people do take things for granted, especially they're free, it's good. Wait, balance it out. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Share support.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Okay, we're nearly at the end. So has anybody got other burning things they want to say before we finish?
Just to say, Barbara, can you hear me?
I can.
Lovely to see you. And just, yeah, so yeah, I've just wanted to say thank you for, reminding me of the 5 elements again. And yeah, that's really good to hear that again. And yeah, it was very poetic. And also, Greg, what you said about the inner world, and Elaine, yeah, and to project that outwards. And yeah, it's very, very, I mean, for me, just to hear that again, it's very, yeah, meaningful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. we are almost at the end, so I just wanted to say that, as well as all the comments that have already been sent in, we'll be collating all the things that have been shared this evening as well. So if you look out on the website, we will send round an email when we've collated everything. But we just wanted to turn this into a tangible thing that was actually real and everybody could look at, including the people who haven't been able to be here tonight. So you've all helped to co-produce just, I think, a brilliant resource. So thank you very much. And good night, everybody.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. It was a great presentation. Lovely to see everybody.
It's superb to see everybody. Yes, it's just lovely. Brilliant. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Right.
Thank you.
You're going to stop recording, Barbara.
I do need to stop recording. Where's my stop recording button? Here we are. Stop. There we are.